Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. And today guys, we are reading chapter what chapter are we on? We are on chapter 24. And today guys, we are reading chapter 24. So guys, let's get started. Chapter 24. In February, the Black Pit of Winter, we went on the trip to north central Washington, to an area called the Mepho Valley. It is important for United States citizens to celebrate the birthday of their greatest presidents. So all the schools were closed for a week. Denny, Zoe, and I went to the cabin in the snowy mountains to celebrate. The cabin was owned by a relative of Eve's, whom I had never met. It was quite too cold for me, though on the warmer afternoons I enjoyed running in the snow. I much preferred to lie by the baseboard heater, let others do their exercise, skiing, and snowshoeing. And all of that, Eve was too weak to travel, and her parents were not there, but many others were, all of whom were relatives of some kind or another. We were only there. I only overheard because Eve had thought it was very important for Zoe to spend time with these people, since she, Eve, someone said, would die very soon. That's so sad. I didn't like the whole line of reasoning. First, that Eve would be dying soon. And second, that Zoe needed to spend time with people she had never met because Eve would soon die. They might have been perfectly pleasant people in their puffy pants and fleece vests and sweaters that smelled of sweat. I don't know, but I wondered why they had waited for Eve's illness to make themselves available for companionship. There were a great many of them, and I had no idea who was connected to whom. They were all cousins, I understood, but there were certain generational gaps that were confusing to me. And some of the people were with our parents, but were with uncles and aunts instead, and some might have just been friends. Zoe and Jenny kept mostly to themselves, but they still participated in certain groups, in certain group events like horseback riding in the snow, sledding and snowshoeing. The group meals were convivial. And tough, I was determined to remain aloof. One of the Corsons was always willing to slip me a treat at mealtime, and no one ever kicked me out from under the very large dining table where I lunched during dinner, even though I was breaking my own special code. A certain sense of lawlessness pervaded the house. What with children saying, awake late in the nights, and adults sleeping at all hours of the day like dogs. Why shouldn't I have partaken in debauchery? Conflicted though I was each night, something special happened that I liked very much. Outside the house, which had many identical rooms, each with many identical beds to house the multitude, was a stone. The iPad almost fell. A stone patio with a large hearth. Apparently, in the summer months, it was used for outdoor cooking, but it was used in the winter as well. I didn't care for the stones, which were very cold and were sprinkled in salt pellets that hurt. When they got wedged between my pads, but I loved her fire. Fire! Crackling and hot, it blazed in the evenings. After dinner, and they all gathered bundled in their greatcoats. And one had a guitar and gloves without fingertips. And he played music while they all sang. It was well below freezing, but I had my place next to the hearth and the stars. We could see billions of them because the night was so intensely dark, and the sounds in the distance, the snap of the snow burdened tree branch giving way to the snap, to the wind, the barking of the coyotes, the barking of the coyotes, my breath in calling each other to the hunt, and when the cold overpowered the heat from the hearth, we all shuffled into the house and into our separate rooms, our fur and jackets smelling of smoke and pine sap and flaming marshmallows. At the end of the week drew near, everyone had settled into their routines. Certain cousins went skiing, others to the snowmobile park, and so on. I really want to ride a snowmobile. Denny and Zoe preferred to go on leisurely snowshoe walks together, and they always took me. They had purchased little dog booties for me. Okay, that's just adorable. At the local lodge. And though I felt them unbecoming for a durable dog such as myself, I appreciated that they protected my paws from the freezing or getting cut, from the rough snow and frozen branches that lay hidden underneath. On the final day of our stay, we went for a special walk at a place called Sun Mountain, which we drove to in Denny's car. It was a bit far and tricky to find. Some of the cousins drew a map for Denny, but it was supposed to be a spectacular and glorious walk. With tremendous views all around the valley, we began our walk easily enough, finding the small parking lot, bundling up, strapping on our shoes, and heading off along a low trail. The area was quite remote and didn't seem to have been traveled recently, and so our isolation was somewhat idyllic. Eventually, the path began a switchback pattern and climbed a low mountain, leveled off, and then began a switchback again. Higher and higher we climbed, and yet, since we were a thick forest and entirely surrounded by trees, we had little sense of our altitude. Up and we climbed, deeper and deeper into the woods. We delved until we were quite exhausted. We should be getting close, Denny said to us, but he seemed unsure. I'm tired, Zoe complained. Let's just get to the top of the mountain, Denny urged. And so we continued. When we finally reached the mountaintop, it was all that Denny had hoped for. The view was stunning, as we could stand in one spot and turn completely around to see the entire Meadow Valley spread out below us, but there was little time for enjoyment in the distance. We could see very dark clouds forming, growing, blotting out more and more of the sky. As we watched, and Zoe was crying softly, her face etched with pain. "What's wrong, honey?" Danny asked. "My toes won't move," she said. "Sure they will," he said. "Just wiggle them." But then we looked down at her feet. Danny and I realized the problem. Zoe wasn't wearing her insulated boots. She was wearing her normal street shoes. She had forgotten to change her shoes when we left the car. Danny became very quiet, and I knew he was thinking of the terrible possibilities: frozen toes, frostbite, chilblains, and he was likely probing his own mind for wilderness survival tips he had picked up along his life's journey. Guys, please comment down below what chilblains mean. Please, guys, because I have no idea. Suddenly, he swooped Zoe into his arms and headed off down the hill. It was not an easy trip down a steep and snowy, little used path, but Danny was determined to get his daughter to safety. Down he plunged back into the valley as the sky above our heads grew more ominous, and Zoe's face registered her pain, though her words did not betray her. When we reached the car, Denny started the engine right away to get the heat going. He peeled off Zoe's shoes, and she cried out. "That's okay," he said. "If they hurt, that's good. That means they're going to be okay." We drove the rest of the way down the mountain in great haste and dangerously. So as the car slipped mightily on the hard-packed snow, when he reached the main road, which was bare and wet, Danny hesitated to get us back to the cabin. We should turn north, but he turned on the blinker for a right-hand turn, which was south. Shellen has a hospital, he said, explaining to me his actions. So he turned south toward Shellen. I waited in the car while Denny rushed Zoe into the emergency room. It was my lot to wait in cars outside emergency rooms. I suppose I'm not sure what good I would have been inside anyway, so I waited and I watched. As the dark storm's clouds first engulfed the entire sky and then began to pelt our car with a freezing rain, the likes of which I had never experienced, it was frightening. The force of the storm, with its high winds and icy bits of hail being flung about, I feared for my own life. Being locked in the car as I was, after they had been in the hospital for over an hour. Suddenly, Denny emerged carrying Zoe. They ran to the car and opened the door. Denny laid Zoe on the back blankets he had taken from the hospital. Her feet were covered with many layers of socks, so they looked oversized and incapable of carrying her. Jenny told me to sit in the back seat with Zoe and keep her warm, which I did. We stopped at a gas station as we left Shellen to purchase chains for our tires. And before we started our journey again, Denny made a phone call on his cell phone. "We're a bit of trouble here," he said tensely. Zoe was frostbitten toes. He stopped talking for a moment. allowed the person to whom he was speaking, Eve, I assumed. He expressed herself in loud exclamations. "Please listen," he said. "She's going to be fine. They gave us some ointment, and they gave her some pain medication. She'll be fine, but there's a trouble storm moving in, and we're going to try for home. We won't even go back to the cabin to get our things. Please ask one of the cousins to bring our stuff home with them. If we don't get over the mountains right now, we could be stuck for more than a week on the road. I'll call you when we get home. I love you, and I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry." He hung up the phone, and off we drove. The drive south was horrific. The freezing rain accumulated on the windshield faster than the wipers could push it away. And every few tedious miles, Denny would stop the car and get out to scrape away the icy glaze. It was dangerous driving, and I didn't like it at all. From the back seat with Zoe, I could see Denny's hands were gripping the steering wheel far too tightly. In a race car, the hands must be relaxed, and Denny's always are when I see the in-car videos from his races. He often flexes his fingers to remind himself to relax his grip, but for the excruciating drive down the Columbia River, Denny held the wheel in the death grip. I felt very bad for Zoe, who was clearly frightened. The rear of the car moved more suddenly than the front, and so she and I experienced more of the slipping and sliding sensation generated by the ice. Thinking of how scared Zoe might have been, I worked myself into a state of agitation, and I let myself get carried away before I knew it. I was in a full-blown panic. I pushed at the windows. I tried to clamber into the front seat, which was totally counterproductive. Jenny finally barked, "Zoe, please settle down. Settle Enzo down." She grabbed me around the neck and held me tightly. I fell against her as she lay back, and she started singing a song in my ear, one I remembered from her past. "Hello, little Enzo, so glad to see you." She had just started preschool when she learned that song. She and Eve used to sing it together. I relaxed and let her cradle me. "Hello, little Enzo, so glad to see you too." I would like to tell you that I am such a master of my destiny that I contrived the entire situation, that I made myself crazy to Zoe so Zoe could calm me on this trip, and thus would be distracted from her own pain and agitation. Truth be told, however, I have to admit, I was glad she was holding me. I was very afraid, and I was grateful for her care. The line of the cars trudged steadily but slowly. Many cars were stopped on the side of the road to wait out for the storm. The weatherman and woman on the radio and waiting said waiting would be worst. However, as the weather was stalled, the ceiling was low, and when the warm air arrived as anticipated, the ice would turn to rain, and the flooding would begin. When we reached the turnoff for Highway 2, there was an announcement on the radio. The Blewett Pass was closed because of a jackknife tractor trailer rig. We would have to make a long detour to reach I-90 near George Washington. Jenny anticipated faster travel on 190 because of its sides. But it was worse, not better. The rains had begun, and the median was more like a spillway than a grassy divide between east and west. Still, we continued our journey because there was a little else we could do. After 7 hours of grueling travel, and still 2 hours away from Seattle, in good driving weather, we stopped at McDonald's and Denny purchased food for us to eat. I got chicken nuggets. Then we chicken nuggets. Then we pressed onward on Easton, outside Easton, where snow was piled on the sides of the highway. Denny stopped his car along dozens of other cars and trucks in the train-up area and ventured into the freezing rain. He laid down on the pavement and installed the tire chains, which took half of an hour, and And when he climbed back into the car, he was soaking wet and shivering. They're going to close the pass soon. Jenny said to me and Zoe. That trucker heard it on the radio. It was nasty and horrible. Snow and ice and freezing rain, but he pushed on, our little old BMW, chugging up the mountain until we reached the summit where there have the ski lifts. And then everything changed. There was no snow, no ice, just rain. We rejoiced in the rain. Shortly, Jenny stopped the car to remove the chains, which took another half hour and got him soaking again. And then we were going downhill. The windshield wipers flipped back and forth as quickly as they could, but they didn't help much. The visibility was terrible. Danny held the wheel tightly, and he squinted into the darkness, and we eventually reached North Bend, and then Issaquah, and then the floating bridge across Lake Washington. It was near midnight, the 5-hour drive having taken more than 10. When we finally pulled into our driveway at home, Denny carried Zoe into her room and put her to sleep. He turned on the television and I watched news reports of Snoqualmie. I try to pronounce that. Pass, where we had just been, being shut down because of a rock slide that had destroyed the westbound lanes. That's just sad. Then he went into the bathroom and shed his wet clothes. He returned wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. He pulled a beer from the refrigerator and opened it. He took out his cell phone and pressed a button. Maxwell, Danny said after a moment. I assume Eve is asleep. He paused. Tell her we're fine. We're back home. She should call first thing in the morning. There was a great deal of shouting I could hear on the other end of the phone, but I couldn't make out the words. Denny let the shouting go on for quite some time before he said, Maxwell, I am far too exhausted for this right now. Yell at me tomorrow. He hung up he hung up the phone, and when it buzzed again, he refused to answer. It buzzed again and again, relentlessly, and when his landline rang, he refused that too. He didn't even get under the covers. He lay back on the bed, his knees hanging over the end, and his feet dangling to the floor, and he fell into fast, long sleep and didn't wake up until morning. Guys, I'm gonna look how long chapter 25 is. Anyways, guys, it's pretty long, pretty short, but guys, we're gonna end this chapter right here. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this chapter. And guys, I hope you are enjoying the rest of your summer, guys. And guys, I hope you have a fantastic July 4th. And guys, happy holidays. And see you next time. Bye. See you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment all down below. And guys, see you next time. Peace out. Bye. See you next time.